Welcome to episode 426 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro Podcast, recorded live on April 17, 2026. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, Ben and Scott dig into the world of Cowork, comparing Anthropic's Claude Cowork and Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork across desktop versus cloud, local file access versus native graph data, context windows, models, and regional availability. They also dig into the hidden skills menu in Microsoft 365 Cowork, building custom skills with Markdown in OneDrive, the missing MCP story, and how Cowork fits alongside regular Copilot chat. If you want, stick around for the after show, where Scott vents about Gemma 4 eating all his storage. Another episode. Scott, you decided to join me for this episode after you, I was going to say left me with joy, but you really didn't leave me with joy. You delegated your responsibilities of the last episode to Joy. And you missed out. I brought
some joy to your life.
You did bring some more joy to my life.
No, thanks to Joy Apple for stepping in. I had a scheduling snafu. I had to go do some roundtables at Azure MVP Summit and ended up having some discussions around how folks are using AI to transform their careers. And actually that kind of like intersects with our conversation today, because we're going to be back to the whole AI thing.
Yeah.
So today let's chat Cowork.
Cowork, like the building or where I go get a Cowork.
Coworkers.
A Cowork subscription.
Cowork versus Cowork kind of thing. Yeah. So one of the things that I've been on lately, this path I've been down, and this was definitely like a theme that I picked up a couple weeks ago with the MVPs at Summit, is the kind of pace of things continues to accelerate. There's always new tools, all that coming out.
Yep.
But also the methodology for existing tools is changing over time. So there are things that maybe if somebody's been, like we talked about CLIs, things like Claude Code and Gemini Code and Copilot CLI and all that, and like getting back to the terminal, that approach that exists in those ecosystems of creating agents and creating skills and kind of going down the stack, it's rapidly changing over time. So one of the discussions we were having was like, hey, you potentially actually are in a worse place today if you're starting out with, let's say, in like Claude and Claude Code. You know, you've got a Claude MD, or maybe you're in GitHub Copilot CLI and you have a Copilot MD, whatever it happens to be. And you've set this like grounded set of instructions. Well, maybe you had to set that grounded set of instructions because 6 months ago, the models weren't that good. But today they're actually just better at less you telling them what to do and more asking them questions and then letting them kind of come to these frameworks on their own, things like agents and skills. So we're in this weird world of Markdown rules the day. I didn't see this one coming, right? Didn't have it in my bingo card where Markdown would be like the new programming language of the future, but it is. It unlocks a bunch of stuff. So today we're going to talk about, rather than the CLI side of things, we're going to talk about the Cowork side of things. So a little bit about kind of Claude Cowork, what that does, and more specifically M365 Cowork and where that sits in, I think, the kind of agentic ecosystem of being able to perform tasks, schedule work, more than single things. Like it's less write this report for me, spit the report out, more like go actually action something, like go triage my mailbox for me kinds of things, and how those are powerful and how they form up and how you can kind of customize them and take them a little bit more forward with things like Markdown files that just equate to skills that you can go and deploy out there.
Yeah, you mean Cowork is kind of like a coworker that can go do stuff alongside me? It's like
it's tough with the naming here. So
really, naming is tough. Shocker.
I mean, it is hard because there's Claude Cowork, and that's the Anthropic or the folks who run that. It's been out there for a while if you are some kind of paid Claude subscriber. So if you're either on like the Pro or the Max plans or things like that. And then Microsoft also has Anthropic models, like you can go and run Sonnet and things like that inside of M365 if you're in the right geos and you have like the responsible AI access and governance and all that around it. But you can go run Anthropic things, but then there's also this Anthropic-ish thing in Copilot Cowork, but fundamentally different set of behaviors just because of the way these two things are wired up, right? So maybe we should kind of like walk the stack of like how these work and where they're different. And then we can get into M365 Cowork and a little bit about.
And you say they're different, but looking at it as I played with it, there are absolutely some similarities here too. In terms of, I guess,
similarities, yes, but I think from the start, they're very different. So if you think about, yes, I have a coworker that can go and perform tasks for me.
Certain actions.
Sounds simple on the surface. Yep. Both of these things do this, but the modalities are very different, right? Desktop versus cloud. The connectivity and the ecosystem is very different. Again, things like access to maybe model context protocol, MCP servers, both local and remote can be different based on that whole local versus cloud experience. There's also things like differences in the models that run for themselves, which then hits like context window limits and some other things that are out there. So there's like this, it's weird. There's two things with the same name that kind of like one sits in the Microsoft ecosystem, but uses Claude models under the hood. And then there's the Anthropic Claude side of things, where it has its set of capabilities and it does what it needs to do. But, you know, as similar as they look on the surface, I think they are bifurcated in that one is going to do one thing's better than the other. So now you're at a point where if you're in both ecosystems, like me, you're there as well. Now you got to choose the right tool for the job, which is becoming a little bit of a mental burden. But if we just start at the top, so thinking through the modality of where these things run, Claude Cowork runs on your desktop. So it runs in an application that sits on your desktop, Mac OS, Windows, and you're there and ready to go. And Microsoft 365 Cowork runs in the cloud because there is no local, like real, like local experience,
right?
Or at least an app that can talk and interact with local resources, things like that. And that becomes impactful. Like, so one of the very first things that I did when I sat down and I said, ooh, M365 Cowork is here and it's available in the Frontier program. Let me go light this up and play with it. Was I wanted it to organize some files that were in a folder on my PC, local folder. I've done this probably 100 plus times with Claude Cowork at this point. Right? Hey, take this folder of receipts and categorize it for me. Take this folder of blah, blah, blah. Help me organize my Obsidian vault. Like just point at this folder and go, let it do its thing. And when it was the very first time I went to use M365 Cowork, I immediately hit a blocker in that the data that I wanted to organize wasn't in the cloud. It did not reside in OneDrive. So I had to go and upload all this stuff, kick it up there, kind of wait until I could get like the ability for like that file picker that's in the M365 Copilot app to finally like refresh itself and grab what it needs to and see that stuff out there. But that modality of like desktop app and local connectivity versus what's ultimately a web app sitting in a desktop wrapper with no local connectivity, it is something to think about and kind of just hits you right in the face.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about that, kind of on the flip side, is I've also run into things. I've used Claude Cowork. I've scheduled tasks in there, but because it's all local, guess what has to happen for my scheduled task to actually run when it's scheduled? The machine has to be on, it has to be booted up, etc. So there's some of them that I have to do on Mac OS for different reasons. My laptop is my Mac device, my desktop is Windows. I have to have my laptop on for that to run. Or there's some things I do have running in Windows on my desktop. If I'm going to be out on vacation or I'm going to be traveling, I have to leave my desktop on for those to run. Versus the nice thing about Cowork and when it is in the cloud like that is, yeah, maybe I don't have some of my local desktop access, but now if I am doing scheduled things, I'm not necessarily relying on my machine to be on because those tasks can run up in the cloud, all of that. So to your point, it's interesting as we look at these and as I've been playing with these to your earlier point, they're not the same. There's pros and cons to each one of these.
Yeah, it's just the mental friction. And like I said, I think for me, it's kind of getting into the modality and thinking, am I in the right place?
Right. And because of the names having certain expectations, because Claude Cowork has been around for so much longer.
Yes. Well, I think, there's definitely some inherent bias there. Just having been in kind of that ecosystem and getting used to things like Claude Cowork before being introduced to M365 Cowork.
Yep. All right. What else is on here? Local file access. That was like the first three. M365 data. I mean, this one's kind of apparent, obvious, maybe, is that Microsoft Cowork, you're going to have all the graph data. You have all the Work IQ stuff that's available just natively right there. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to wire it up. It's going to run in that security boundary versus Claude Cowork. And I've done all this. You can go wire up all these MCP connectors to get that data. But there's a little bit more work there on the Claude Cowork side if you're in the Microsoft 365 world. If you have multiple tenants, this is one thing, Scott. Both with Claude Cowork and Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork, I wish I could live in just a single Microsoft 365 tenant, because having meetings and team conversations and emails and all of this in 4 or 5 different tenants for reasons that are very valid based on the clients I work for, these tools do not help me consolidate all of that stuff across multiple M365 tenants, no matter which one I use. But that M365 data is another interesting one to think about as you work through it, think through it.
So I haven't been doing this with Claude Cowork, at least as far as my organizational, like my work data.
Yep.
But OneDrive and Dropbox and Google Drive are all connected locally for me.
Okay.
So I remember like one of the very first things that I did with Claude Cowork is I have a Dropbox folder that's full of just receipts. It's where I dump every receipt that I scan, whether it's for work, for life, whatever it is. And it's been this dumping ground for years. And it lives in the cloud. It lives in Dropbox, but because Dropbox syncs to my desktop, I didn't need any kind of special connector or anything. It was just go connect to a file system and let it run. So I think even like for me, once you understand like the particular model you're working with or you get used to it, you kind of like want that as well. So there would still be some things where it says like, oh, in M365 Cowork land, it connects to your M365 data. Well, I can connect to the graph with Work IQ. And the MCP that's available there. So saying like M365 Cowork does graph access and Claude Cowork doesn't, that doesn't really fly. Granted, one is way faster than the other. I will say like M365 Cowork, way faster than doing things in Work IQ and the MCP. Same thing for like access to data. If I have OneDrive and I can sync that stuff and bring it down, I can still manipulate it. So it many times as I'm like working with M365 Cowork, in the back of my head, I'm also thinking about the ways to just work around it with Claude Cowork so that in the event like my employer should give me Claude someday, cross my fingers, I would just be able to go back into that ecosystem, not only for my personal stuff, but for my work stuff as well.
Yeah. And that I've done that. Like I'm in the same boat where it's files on the local computer. I think for some, and this is some of my clients, it's not even so much can you do it? It's in this comparison that we have that we'll post in the show notes talks about, some of it's a little bit more the security side of things too. Like I have certain clients that are like, we are going to use Copilot because for certain compliance reasons, regulatory reasons, or just general what IT is comfortable with for various reasons, they do shut down all these other ones. And having Cowork, having Purview there for auditing, being able to put a few more of those security controls around it, have security around it, does make a difference for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. No argument there that like being in the ecosystem is part of the value prop that you get out of it.
What other ones on here do you want to talk about? There's a whole list. Again, we'll put it out there.
Yeah, I think there's all those window, like admin
what about
controls,
the context window? Like that's an interesting one on here.
Yeah, so Claude Cowork, again, back to like the model things, uses Claude Opus 4.6. I don't think they've switched to 4.7. Like that just came out.
They did. Cowork has 4.7 in there already. They came out with it yesterday. I was impressed.
It was just yesterday. I haven't had anything to do in Claude Cowork today, so I haven't been in there. So yeah, you kind of get like latest and greatest model, which means you also get these like, for better or worse, larger context windows to work with tokens. So the data that you're passing in, at least in Opus 4.6, you had up to 1 million tokens in a context window. And it looks like Copilot Cowork is 16,000 characters, which is a little limiting in the grand scheme of things. So that's another modality thing where you have to think about what's the story and context window that you're building in, that you're kind of grounding into this coworker to go do something for you. Like, how complex is the thing that I'm asking it to do? And how much of that do I need to teach it in the form of like defining the agent or defining the piece set of work that needs to be done? It's agent skill, whatever, that you're going to pop in there. So it's not something I've ever really thought about with Claude Cowork. And I haven't run into any inherent limitations with M365 Cowork yet, but I'm sure there's going to be some rough under the edge, like just hidden on the edge thing that hurts just a little bit at some point because of that.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Trusted Tech. If you're managing Microsoft 365, you already know licensing isn't simple. E3 versus E5, the brand new E7 licenses, Copilot security bundles, and with price changes coming in July 2026, the stakes are getting higher. Trusted Tech helps IT leaders make sense of their Microsoft 365 environment with a free licensing consultation. Their engineers analyze what you're licensed for and what you're actually using, and where you can optimize, whether that means consolidating security tools, preparing for Copilot, or eliminating wasted spend. Plus, they offer proactive and reactive support, which has been awarded yet another solution partner designation from Microsoft for support services. If you want a clear, data-backed plan that has helped over 7,500 subscribing customers save up to 20% on Microsoft 365 before your next renewal, visit trustedtech.team/MSCloudPro M365 and schedule your free consultation today. And going back to the models too, just this document or this image does say Opus 4.6 for Claude Cowork. 4.7 is there now, but it says it's version not disclosed for Copilot Cowork. And I actually just looked in mine and I have both Sonnet 4.6 and Opus 4.7 that I can select in Microsoft 365 Cowork. So I was actually surprised to see Microsoft add the model to Copilot the same day it came out. Like, Claude came out with 4.7 and it showed up in Claude and Cowork almost, or not Claude and Cowork, Claude and Copilot almost simultaneously. But Microsoft, that's one area I would say too that I feel like they've listened a little bit. By default, they still go to auto, but they are letting you have a lot more control over being able to select the model you want to use.
Yep.
Which has been...
you can get in there and play with it. It's so this is another interesting one and a little bit of like a double-edged sword. And I've been running into this for a while. So I work in a global organization, global team, particularly like my team members and my coworkers over in Europe. We'll be on a call and we'll be doing something. And I remember the first time I did this with researcher hopping in and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like they give us access to Claude models, Anthropic models inside Researcher. And everybody's like, yes. And then they're like, no, because I don't get that because I'm in Europe and it's locked out due to tenant configuration and things like that. So back to the whole like where you are in the world and things like GDPR boundaries and tenant configuration, may or may not be available to you. And so far, like, because it's all built on Anthropic models as far as the Cowork Frontier agent that's there today. Same thing. It's locked out and not the most viable thing.
Which, that's interesting. You brought it up. Let's dive into Cowork a little bit. So Microsoft Cowork, yes, you just said one of the key things there is the Microsoft 365 Cowork agent, because that is what it is, an agent that you go into your Microsoft 365 Copilot, go find the agents, and you install Cowork as an agent into Copilot, which is different than at least how it appears in Claude, where it's just a toggle between two different things.
Yeah, I think Claude ultimately has like chat, cowork, code.
Yep.
So you've got these kind of like three modalities and you can go across them, or three kind of main interaction pillars. And once you learn them, you kind of pick and choose and go to the right one. M365 Copilot's a little bit different in that it tries to drive you into like the search hub for everything. So just thinking down like your hamburger menu on the left, right? Your set of options. You've got search, you've got agents, you've got chats, and just running down the gamut of things. So I think it is a interesting decision to say, rather than like being like right in your face, like M365 Copilot is always going to be here kind of thing, that it's to a certain degree demoted, like as an agent and just sitting down a little bit further in the stack. So for me, I've got like tens of agents installed right now in like M365 Copilot. So it's like, depending on how that list shifts over time, as I'm adding agents, taking things out, it can be like a little bit like of a chore just in the UI to get down there and find it.
You need to start pinning them, Scott. Pin your agents and...
I don't know why I pin them. They're just going to go away and I'm going to find a new one, or they're going to move my cheese, or whatever it is.
Kind of like they moved apps again. That's another conversation. Apps moved again. Okay. Squirrel.
Apps. Yes, apps. Apps was the other part. That's up there. Yeah. Yeah. So it is a little bit different to go and find it. So like you said, so you got to be, to bootstrap, you have to be in the Frontier program.
Yep.
You have to have the Anthropic models, like the governance controls in the M365 Admin Center lit up for your tenant, saying like, hey, this is okay for folks to use. And then you've got to go the extra step. And I don't think you can you automate this as an admin, like deploying agents to all your users? Like I had to go in and find it like in the agent store, go add it manually kind of thing.
I went and found it. I'm trying to remember. I think you can. I think I did push out agents to everybody in my tenant. So I believe there are admin controls where you can go push this agent out to all these different people and publish it to these people and all that. But
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that.
All right. Yeah. So like you kind of get through the installation gauntlet as a user, and then you've got M365 Cowork. I think it's also interesting that the way Cowork presents to a user. So the very first time you go into just about any agent in M365, you've got a set of like suggested prompts and what this agent can do and how's it going. So it looks very similar to some of the other like default prompts in the prompt library for an M365 tenant. Like it's got stuff like catch me up, organize my inbox, organize my week, help me prep for a meeting, plan for an event, prepare my one-on-ones. And funny enough, that the other default prompt is research a company. Like, yeah. Okay, that's in Cowork, not in Researcher. So there's a little bit of nuance there.
That is true. But I do use Claude Cowork a lot for researching a company before I have a call with them.
Which makes sense because in Claude land, in Cowork land, I can also bring projects into Cowork, like collections of documents and all those kinds of things. So similar thing I can do over in M365 Copilot. I could bring like a collection of documents together, like maybe like research from Gartner, IDC, something like that. It depends on what you're going at and what you're really kind of trying to get it to do and get out of it. But those things are all there for you. And I think the natural inclination is just to kind of go in there and like pick one and see how it does and what it's got going on. So back to like first experiences. So like my first experience with M365 Copilot was help me organize my inbox. So just that default prompt that's there. So it kind of wants to go through and it does the typical thing that I think most of these like reasoning models are doing now. It churns for a little while, it thinks, it goes out, reads your inbox. And then I found it to be like oddly inflexible. Like I couldn't get it to do what I want, right? And sitting here saying, like, I found a bunch of newsletters. Okay, great. You want me to delete all your newsletters? No, don't delete my newsletters. Take the newsletters from the Information and Business Insider and put them in my inbox other, archive the rest, and then delete these two kind of thing, right? Which should just work. It didn't. It didn't like me at all in that model. I also found like through that one and a couple of the other, I guess, system prompts, default prompts that are there, because it's erring towards the side of like human in the loop and human interaction, you still end up doing a lot of clicking. So those things like organize my inbox, like if it makes the wrong decision, like Scott, I want to delete all your newsletters. And I'm like, I don't want to delete all my newsletters. You still need to go and individually triage them. And it's 100,000 times faster to just open your inbox and do it there than it is like clicking the buttons and the little drop downs and the little action notifiers that come up inside of M365 Cowork. So it's I think it presents that it does what it like says on the tin, but the interaction for it is a little bit strange. But I'm sure that'll improve over time. Probably one of those benefits to just saying, hey, it's in an agent so they can iterate on it a little more rapidly.
Right. Well, and I would say from that, like, telling an agent to go organize my inbox would inherently make me nervous. So I do appreciate that they are a little bit on the side of caution, but it would be nice that if you told it to do something, it actually did it. To be fair, Claude's done the same thing to me. And it's interesting. So how often have you found yourself using AI? And then after like 15 or 20 minutes of arguing with it to try to get it to do something, you have that realization of this would have been quicker for me to just go do it.
I'm getting there a lot quicker these days. My patience is just that much shorter. And I think like some tools like Claude Cowork and M365 Cowork, they don't help with that frustration. So one of the things that I've been doing more and more on the CLI side, at least in like Claude Code land, is you can do things like when you're on that path and you start banging your head against the wall, maybe the context is poisoned a little bit too much, right? Like the task has gotten too big or it's just gone off the rails, is you can do things like you can rewind. Right? I want to step back in history before the go back before the context was poisoned or we got off the rails. And I kind of want to explore a different path. So I've gotten like really spoiled by that in the CLI experiences where it doesn't exist in Cowork land. So at least like Claude Cowork versus Claude Code, like we discussed a couple of weeks ago about the CLIs, like I just default to the CLIs, but you really don't have that option with M365 Copilot. There is no CLI for it, right? There's just the web app or the desktop app and the web wrapper, and you kind of get in there and get going with it. But I think generally, like I ran into the same thing with a lot of just the default prompts that were there. Sure, they were pointy and opinionated, which I think is good for anybody who's just starting out. And maybe you don't have a workflow or you're open to having this thing come back to you with like for your mailbox, like a different categorization system. It's really hard when it's yours and it's all out there. But I think we'll have a workaround there because we were going through and talking about this one and getting ready. And we both realized that M365 Copilot does something that we didn't know.
Yes. Are we going to dive into that?
Cowork.
Well, before
Copilot
we do that,
Cowork.
There's one thing I want to call out because I missed it the first time I was looking at this too in terms of getting started, is you get that prompt. And this will even lead into what you just said too a little bit. And you have your get to work, organize my inbox, my week. But then it asks, how can I help you today? And you can start typing. And part of my first thought was, okay, this like organize my week is doing maybe a little bit more than just typing. There's a button next to how can I help you today that says add attachments. And if you hover over it, like the info box is just add attachments. I'm like, okay, great. So I can add a file or a PowerPoint. If you click that, you get attach cloud files, upload images and files. But then there's this other one right above it that's add work context. And it has files, peoples, and meetings. And if you click that, it gives you a whole nother set of menus where you can go in and it'll give you where you can select people from your contacts, you can select files, you can actually select meetings. So it'll surface your whole calendar in there. So if you want to add a specific meeting context in there, certain emails, chats. So I could go add like our chat from this podcast recording in there, channels, sites. So all of these different things, I guess you could say, from inside of Microsoft 365. But then another one here is skills, and it has PDF, where the PDF skill will create, read, and manipulate PDF documents. Has the same thing for Word, Excel, calendar management. So if you're trying to recreate some of these, there's a lot of nuances and tweaks that you can make that are kind of hiding, in my opinion, under the add attachments. Not a place I would maybe go look to add all these skills in or add these different
I
options?
completely missed it. So I'm so used to when I'm in M365 Copilot, like I say, like you get kind of like in your like way of work in these ecosystems that I'm pretty much down to, I know in like every chat window that's there, I can just type a / and all my recent documents and everything are there, and I can just attach my cloud files. So like for me, embarrassingly, like I was not inquisitive enough to click the add attachment button and see that underneath there. So like that whole set of skills is interesting. And I kind of ran into this when we were going through and planning and reading the documentation, stuff like that. But some of these skills that are there, like there's an email skill. Bet you that ties back directly to that other that other prompt that's up there. And maybe like the thing, I'm going to have to go and play with this next week after the weekend and get in there and play with it, is I didn't realize that you could create custom skills as well.
Yes.
So that's very interesting to me. Like I would actually like, I don't know if you can do this because you're in there right now. Can you take any of the Cowork skills that are there, like the email skill? Can you go grab like the markdown for that and then be able to edit it and make your own email skill? Or you just got to start from scratch?
I don't know. Let me go see, so I'm going to go look somewhere, because you're right. You have all these skills that are in there, and then you have your custom skill. And where are those custom skills, Scott? Because we looked at this. Because I saw this. I saw like custom skills starting to pop up, and I'm like, so I can have custom skills, but where are they? Which led me to the documentation. Imagine that. I read documentation.
Here we are back at the beginning. Yeah. So they just live in your OneDrive. Yeah. So specifically in your documents folder, you can create a subfolder for Cowork and then a skills subfolder under that. So effectively /documents, /Cowork, /skills. And then within that folder, same thing, subfolder per skill. So the example in the docs is just weekly report. And then within that folder, a skill.md, which is really cool. Like at least they're not like reinventing the ecosystem. Like they're just using Markdown here. And now the immediate thought I had as I was going through this, I'm going to have to play around a bunch next week, is I do have some like skills that today I run in things like Copilot CLI. And like I said, they're all hooked up. I have access to these MCP servers, WorkIQ and Azure DevOps, and kind of all the tools that I need that are out there and available. So I might have to take a couple of those and pop them over and just see like where the friction is in the modality difference between can't interact with my local desktop anymore, but can interact with certainly files in OneDrive. I think it's going to be a real limiter in that there's no MCP connectivity inside M365 Copilot, which means there's no MCP connectivity within M365 Copilot Cowork either. So you're kind of baked in with the set of connectivity that's there and kind of boxed in and gated by just what they offer there today. So I couldn't extend it with say like in my world, one of the things, like I have a skill that goes out and kind of very similar to their example in the docs, creates me a weekly report, but it's not based off of just my inbox. It's based off of things like Azure DevOps, where we're tracking work items and work item management, or like GitHub projects, things like that. So it's a little bit of a limiting factor, but I'm gonna have to go play around, I think, with some of those and see. But like, I think the real power there becomes that much like you've had access to scheduled prompts. So you can do the same thing here in M365 Copilot Cowork. You can absolutely schedule your prompts, but because they also have access to that set of skills that are baked in, PDF, Excel, Word, email, enterprise search, deep research, calendar management, all that stuff, and then extending with your own skills, well, like that could be a pretty powerful thing.
You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP. But is your tenant really ready for it? Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance. We got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/governance. I did go look while you were talking, and I cannot find a way to see the markdown or whatever they're using for those skills that they have built in. I have the folder in OneDrive. If I go to that folder, files that are created as a part of a chat conversation in Cowork are stored there. So it will generate output if you ask it to create a file or a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that. You'll see it in the details about your chat conversation, but then that's where that file will live after the fact too. I would say not necessarily super easy to navigate to because it's under the documents Cowork, but then it's sessions, and the session folder under there is a GUID. So you have to know the GUID for your session if you're looking for the file or use search. And then once you go into there, then you have like your output folder.
Yeah, see, you fire researcher agent off, see if it can figure out the GUIDs, and then come back in.
There you go.
And map it in. Yeah, so you get to play with chat and the other agents and then agentic.
But there are no markdown
Cowork
skills in there. And I haven't found a way in the UI to it'll show me what skill it's using and I can pick a skill, but I can't see anything behind the scenes of what that looks like.
It's not like it's hard to do. Like my example of organizing my inbox my way, like I could go document that. I can absolutely put that in Markdown, but it'd be nice to see like potentially like just that system prompt or like how they're calling their underlying skill or what their underlying skill does, just so you can like mock it in and potentially map it the same way or remap it over to your workload versus reinventing the wheel kind of thing. Same thing for like calendar management, help me prep for my one-on-one kind of thing. Like I found it wasn't very good with the helping me prep for my one-on-one because my conversation with my manager for my one-on-one isn't just about the work that I do. It's about the work that my team does. It's about the work that partner teams do, right? So like you can pull like all my interactions with my manager over the course of the week, but over the course of the week, that's probably like 25% of what's top of mind for me and walking in and where I need to be next. So yeah, I think there are some rough edges here, but I'm excited to go try these custom skill things and see how those go.
Yeah. In theory though, you could pull in chats from your team members. Like if you prepared, if you went and recreated the prepare for your meeting instead of using theirs and pulled in chats from your various team members, chats with your manager, and all of that. In theory, I think you could probably improve that way better than Microsoft could. Just because of that knowledge that you have when you build your skill.
Sure. I'd have to play around with it and see. Like today, from what I've seen, and I think it's going to be a limiting factor here as well, is I already tried to create like declarative agents for these things that have access to my email, my calendar, my chats, things like that. I think they're just severely limited by the context windows and the amount of data that they can pull in and reason across and actually tie back together. I think if you're somebody who's like working the same thing, same area, and it can kind of learn a little bit or have some memory, great. But I can have hundreds of conversations in teams and they're all split brained and all over the place. Yeah. So somebody could be, I've had this happen a lot. Someone's like emailing me or chatting me about an issue for a customer. But it's not actually like a product area that I own. They just know to reach out to me because I'm part of this organization and this product, so that I have to come back and redirect it. And then I end up in these chats that just run forever for like customer escalation. But like it looks important when like something comes across and says, "Ooh, you were on this like high severity incident." It's like, well, no, I just connected customer who had the incident to the right engineering team or things like that.
How do you filter that out? I just sent you an email, Scott. I used the stakeholder comms skill and I said I wanted to communicate with you. And it asked me if I wanted to communicate about what I wanted to communicate about. So I said the podcast. And then it asked what it was. And I said a guest or topic idea and then to email it to you. And it wrote a whole email, put like the to, the from, the subject, the whole body of the email in like essentially in a window inside of the chat. And I just hit send and sent you the email. So some of that type of stuff is kind of cool.
Interactive windows. I think it is nifty. Like that one's probably not a ton of friction, but now imagine triaging your inbox with the 40 things that it says. You're trying to click each little drop down. No, don't do this with this one. Move it over here, kind of thing. Let's see, what else can we chat about with Cowork? So we kind of opened with how Claude Cowork is in similar but different and what some of those modalities were and some of those feature differences. It's probably worth talking about a little bit about like how Copilot Chat and how Copilot Cowork are also different, because you're ultimately like in a chat interface for both of them. So I think as a user or somebody who's getting started with it, you kind of look at it and go, like, what is this thing? So Cowork is going to fill that niche of being able to do multi-step work. So not only go read my inbox, not only categorize my inbox, but then also provide me the ability to actually take action on it, kind of category by category or things like that. You can work across multiple applications because of the skills that are there. So having access to like a Word, Excel, PDF skill, things like that. So you can kind of work with it in maybe, I would think of it as like notebook mode. Like let me bring a bunch of artifacts in and then have it generate a new artifact based on those and have it come out the other side. Because we talked about some of the scheduling things, all that, it means you get more like asynchronous or autonomous, I guess, execution versus just having to sit and wait for a chat, which is kind of synchronous and right in front of you. And yeah, I think we talked about like the action stuff and kind of connectivity and what's there. So you kind of got chat sitting there. Hey, these are my quick one-offs or just single part workflows. And then you've got Cowork sitting there with longer autonomous execution and multi-part workflows.
Yeah. If you're managing file storage today, you've probably felt the pressure. Refresh cycles are harder to plan, costs and complexity are increasing, especially as file workloads scale across regions. That's why Microsoft customers trust Nasuni. As an Azure-certified software, Nasuni provides a global file system designed for enterprise-scale environments, keeping file data secure, governed, and accessible across Azure environments without added infrastructure complexity. It's the foundation to keep your unstructured data stable, even as your infrastructure evolves. To see how much you could save while keeping your initiatives on track, visit nasuni.com/TCO. That's NASUNI.com/TCO. I feel like Cowork is also a little bit more of, I don't know 100% how to frame it, but the ability to like manipulate PDFs. I would say actually doing work versus having a dialogue. Like I'll go into chat a lot
so I think that's that notebook example.
Yeah.
I would typically bundle like a bunch of Word documents together. And then I would say, help me generate a report. Yep. And ultimately all chat does is spit back a bunch of text to me that kind of like breaks in the window and you can't figure it out. And you can't do what you need to. Cowork can actually go that extra step and use things like the PDF or the PowerPoint skill. And it's a little bit more, I don't want to say deterministic. It's just better at like generating those outputs based on the set of inputs that you give it. So when you think about having access to like a deep research skill, so sure, there's research agent over here, or there's this deep researcher over here. They're going to like on the tin look very similar, but one's going to give you a different set of outputs versus the other. So back to like, you got to think about like right tool for the right job kind of thing. Once you kind of get into that, you can figure out where you need to be. But you still have to know where you need to be up front. Right. It continues to be one of the problems with all this AI stuff. It's just because the mental overhead.
Right. With Cowork, when I generated a company research, it gives me the option. Do you want to email it? Do you want to create a Word document? Do you want to do all this? Copilot Chat, it's just like, blah, just spits everything out. Prepare for meeting with something similar. It's like, what topics are we going to talk about? Do you want me to create a PowerPoint presentation that you can use for the meeting? A lot more interactive and work focused versus the chat would just, having a conversation with somebody versus generating tangible outputs, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
it's yet another thing to add to the list, right? And go play around with a little bit.
Yeah, I'm absolutely going to play around with it. I am still absolutely missing. I would love to see, to your point earlier, them add the ability to tie in MCP servers to this somehow. I still feel like that's a big gap between...
It would just unlock so much. I use them all the time. Like I am in my role and for what I do, I'm dead in the water without Azure DevOps and without the Fabric/Kusto MCP. Like I very much need those two things. I use them all day in my job. Therefore, I need access to them through these kinds of tools. So having the ability to do that without having to go and create my own agent and connect into Foundry and then yes, you can go down that path and you can do those things. But not the most fun path to go down when you're just looking to get something done quickly.
Yeah, and even if you went in and created your own agent right now, I don't think you could pull those MCP servers into Cowork with it. You could go create an agent. Maybe you could recreate Cowork with MCP servers, but no.
I'd have to go into Foundry, and then I'd have to use Foundry tools and connectors that are there. Again, different ecosystem, different language. Like It's just hard, right? Like, and I get the stuff takes time, but oh man, I think you just like unlock so much if you made Copilot like a local app that had access to MCP servers.
Yes. Well, they're redoing Windows 11 this year, right? Massive changes to Windows 11 to make it better and faster and less web app heavy and more native apps. And maybe we'll get a better Copilot app as part of that. I'm not holding my breath.
We'll see. I think there's a bunch like the OS vendors can do to improve the space. Maybe we'll close on this one. Like this will be like our after hours chat here. So hey, thanks for sticking around, everybody. That was that was Coworkers with Cowork and all that.
Yeah, we went long today, Scott.
Yeah, we did. I got to give you one of my pet peeves before I leave, and maybe you can solve this for me and make me like be able to sleep over the weekend. So what was it this week? Last week? I forget. It all flies by. Gemma 4 came out, the new model, the multimodal reasoning model from Google. So that came out with a couple different modes. It came out with I think a 2 billion parameter, 4 billion parameter, and a 26 billion parameter. So immediately, a bunch of application developers kind of slurped this up and said, oh, this is awesome. Like I can get like a 2 billion parameter model that can run on things like an iPhone or an Android device or your tablet or your computer and all that. Okay. So for me, I have like, let me give you the use case. So I have several applications on my computer that all use underlying local models that have been downloaded, like the model weights, either MLX or GGUFs that are out there, but now they're all using the same one. So I use this really cool app called Cotypist, which does basically like tries to complete your sentences for you as you're typing them on the keyboard. And it's super nifty and super cool. Lets you pick your model that you want to use in there. And they added Gemma to that. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to get off Qwen and I'm going to go to a Gemma. So I go grab the Gemma 4 billion parameter model, which is about 5.5, 6 gigs. Okay. So no problem. I got 5.5, 6 gigs of free space. I'll delete that Qwen model that was taking up 3.5, 4 gigs and I'll make a little bit of room. But then I also had a need to hook up. I was doing a little thing on the side, trying to play around with like local LLMs. And so with Claude Code. So I took LM Studio, which is similar to like Olama, like, hey, go download the model. So downloaded the same exact model. Now I have 2 copies of it because it lives in 2 different apps because it's like bundled with the app and in like an app bundle. And so, and recently I ran into this week a third one that I also use where I can't even select the model. It's baked into the app just as part of the functionality of it. So like the app bundles are like blowing up in size. So I was complaining to somebody at work about this, like the OS vendors, I think really need to carve out a space for application developers to host model weights, like to download like all those like GGUF or in the case of like Apple Silicon, MLX2, and store it side by side. So if I've already downloaded the Qwen or the Gemma 4 billion parameter model,
don't download it again.
I shouldn't consume 16 gigs of space. I should just have that 5.5, whatever, once and let everybody read out of it and have it come together. It's been killing me because like my Mac has a terabyte hard drive, generally big enough. I am running out of space constantly over the last couple of weeks because of this. Like as these new things are coming, they're being pitched out there free, open source, like Gemma 4. They're just getting integrated into everything and it's blowing it up. I'm just starting to notice the same thing on my phone, like where you have even like
less storage,
less headroom, to go ahead and do that. So I do think like the OS vendors need to solve for that space. And they should also start to kind of think about like the new world of agentic workflows and surfacing things like local MCPs. So like in Windows land, a lot of that stuff's been around like, oh, hey, we'll have an MCP for File Explorer. I think Apple should do the same thing on Mac OS. Just have a local file system MCP with its own guardrails, security model, any authentication it needs, those kinds of things. So my pet peeve, like I said, this week is I got all this cool functionality that's coming into all these apps because now it's kind of like quote unquote free for developers to do, but it's leading to just like me. So if anybody knows how to solve that one, I would love to do it. Other than me hunting down every model and creating like symlinks and trying to figure out like what the canonical place I want to store it is. And some of these applications don't like the symlink thing, so it doesn't always work.
I don't know that I'm going to let you sleep over the weekend. I don't have a solution. I'm not an OS developer.
You're just like, hey Scott, be like me. Just go grab a 4 terabyte or an 8 terabyte Mac and you'll be done.
No, because you can't buy those anymore because we have no more storage that's available to buy anywhere ever again.
This is true too.
We are out of technology. Technology is sold out, Scott. That is an interesting problem, though. But I do agree. You just need to be able to download the model once and somehow recognize. You know what that gets away from, though? It gets away from Apple's whole model of that's how Windows ended up the mess it is, right? Because they wanted to have shared libraries that these applications can all leverage shared libraries. Mac OS said, no, that's stupid. We're going to make everything in a self-contained package.
Yep.
So here we are now wanting Apple to be more like Microsoft is essentially what you just said.
Yeah, to a certain degree.
But I think it does make sense.
We'll see who gets there, right? I think it's just more of that continuum as these things start to get adopted. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if 6 months from now, like the majority of applications that have things like text inputs or take voice inputs or do like computer vision on top of these things, like if they don't just start to really like glom on to things like Gemma 4 and these OSS things that are out there, because like they just work. And they're free and they're licensable. Like they're just in the right place at the right time. So we'll see what vendors do. But like I said, if anybody's got a creative way to solve this one, and don't come back to me with answer symlinks, because that doesn't work for all of them. I would love to hear it, because maybe I'm missing something.
All right. And reach out to Scott on LinkedIn if you're still listening to the after show with Ben and Scott complaining about technology. And solving the world's problems. This should be Ben and Scott solving the technology problems of the world, the after show. All right.
The after show.
Well, with that, it is 90 degrees in Florida. Go enjoy your weekend. I don't know. It's getting hot already for me. I'm ready to go back to the 75, 80.
Yeah, it's like that at about 6 a.m. After that, it's all off the rails. So.
Yes, the gym has still been okay at 5:30 in the morning, but I'm dreading the next several months because this isn't going to last long. But enjoy. I will be, by the time people listen to this, the conference will have come and gone. I'm headed down to the Microsoft 365 Community Conference tomorrow, the day after we're recording this, not the day after people are listening to this.
Well, enjoy your conference. Hope you come back with some good information. And
all right.
We'll see you when you're back.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. Thanks, Ben. Have a good one.
If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.